One question, two answers, three takeaways. This is The Process with Brad Borland and Mike McInnis. All right, today's question is more of a topic with a lot of questions. We wanted to talk a little bit about like training, going to the gym, training, father and son training, and really mentoring your son or daughter. Let's face it, we both have sons, so I'm going to say son in this episode just out of by default. So I'll just give you a little intro where I'm at. My son is 15, and he started lifting a little bit for PE at high school, and I've taken him to the gym here, locally where I go. Just starting out reminds me a ton of how when I started. He's tall, he's slender, and so. But I think we're in a different era. I think that we are in the era of like social media, and image is more important than ever, at least in these kids' minds and everything. And so they're sort of on the radar a lot more nowadays. There's no hiding, so to speak, whether you like it or not. But so with that said, I wanted to bring Mike in on his opinion because his son is older and he's kind of well on his way, and he taught him through his teen years and 20s and stuff like that. Sort of get his take because, like I said, my son's starting, and I'll interject a few things here and there with my story, or my situation. But I wanted to get your take on kind of what you did with your son, how you did it, how he took to it, if he took to it at all initially, and where we go from there. Like how can we give a little bit of advice to the listeners about, hey, maybe give them some steps, some guidelines to go through. But first, I wanted to kind of start with, we're close in age, and when we started training, it was very, very different than it is today.
Oh yeah.
I think the old man get off my lawn might come out in this episode, but I'm sorry. But I think, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, for the most part, we had a little bit different experiences with some of the stuff. But when I started, it was just train and change my physique. That was like it. That
Yeah.
was I was like a locomotive. 3
Yeah.
hours a day in the gym, 6 days a week. Train, overtrain, all that stuff. What was your kind of initial experience when you were a kid? Like, I was 14. I had a weight set in the backyard. And then by the time I was 15 or 16, I joined a local gym. What was kind of your first experience?
Well, the funny thing for me is, I started lifting in high school, for football and sports. We had mandatory
Mm.
weightlifting for when you played sports. And oddly enough, I hated it. I could not stand it. And, I mean, I did it because we had to, but I didn't have a love for it. I did not want to do it. Now, the funny thing is, when I got to college, it started changing, and I played sports in college as well, but something started clicking in me that, like, okay, I really need to learn how to do this on my own and not be, forced to do it by coaches. So then I started working out in college and reading Muscle and Fitness every month and things like that, and learning from the older guys in the gym.
Yeah, I think that's like I alluded to earlier. I think that's where we differ a little bit on our initial, because I was the shy, skinny kid that wanted to get bigger, and
Hmm.
I think you were sort of attached to teams, right?
Yeah.
Sports and
Yeah.
a lot of a lot of groups and things like that. So
Yep.
and I know that I had a lot of friends in sports, and a lot of them that did play sports had the same exact initial reaction. They didn't like it.
Hmm.
It almost seemed as if it was a punishment in a weird way.
Yeah.
And once they weren't required to do it, whether it's after high school or college, they dropped it.
Yeah.
So I didn't have really any mentoring. The older guys in the gym, of course, we talked about that a lot in the past about older. Back then, it was the 30 and above, right? But older guys, you obeyed the rules. They would give you advice and those things, kinds of things. But so your son, he's
He'll
26.
be he'll be 26 in a couple weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my son's 15. So I kind of brushed past a little bit of what I've been doing with my son, just kind of coaxing him in and just kind of um, easing him into it, right? But What were some of the things you had to do with your son? How did that all start?
Well, I kind of told my story how I hated it in the beginning, and then I grew to obviously love it, and it's in my blood, now. So I knew the benefits of training with weights. I mean, there's so many positives that come from, especially in your teenage years. And I wish, looking back, I wish I would have gotten serious when I was, like you said, 14, 15 years old.
Hmm.
So when he turned 14, I've said, hey, why don't you go to the gym with me and let me start showing you some stuff. Anyway, he was really hesitant, and you probably remember him back then. He was tall and skinny, like he weighed maybe 100 whenever I took him to the gym, and he didn't like it, and I think it was a little intimidation factor, you know, maybe not maybe pressure to follow into my footsteps. You know what I'm saying? So we did it for a short amount of time, and then he didn't want to do it anymore. So I put the brakes on and let him not go until he was ready. I think it took maybe 8 or 9 months later, and I was going to the gym one day. He's like, Danny, can I go with you today? And I was like, I didn't. I was so excited. Yeah, I try to control my excitement, but you have to wait until that person, your son or whoever it is, you have to wait until they are ready. You
Right.
can introduce it to them,
Hmm.
but just like in my situation, I hated working out in high school, but I grew to love it. And same thing with him. When he came back, he was all in.
Yeah, it's like I said, it differs a little with me, and I'm very cautious with my son about motivation and intention and what the reasons are and stuff and goals and all that. So, my goal, of course, I eventually wanted to compete in bodybuilding, so every workout was like imperative. It was just so important, and meals and all these things. And there's a big part of me that I don't want that for my son. I don't want him to be so obsessed or so ingrained and neck deep in it that it kind of takes over his life. And, he neglects, being social and school and all these other things in life. So I definitely want him to be well rounded. Was that ever an issue with your son? Was it ever a concern that like, you know, oh, I don't want him to get too much in the deep end with it? Or did he adjust well with it?
He adjusted pretty well, and really, it had at least from what I could see, it had such a positive impact on him where it wasn't like obsessed with it like you and I have both been in the past with competing and things like that. He enjoyed it, and when you're especially in your teenage years, if when you build a little muscle, your confidence goes up too, and because the work that it took to do that, so it translates to other things. So you're more confident in school. You're more
Mm.
confident in social situations, things like that. So once he started lifting, he started seeing some benefits, and I think it made his confidence level really go up. And that's really a huge result of working out that I think is great for younger kids.
Yeah, and I think you kind of touched a little bit on this, but I think something that both of our sons have a little bit of commonality with is they're both a bit more of an introverted side, I
Yeah,
would say.
absolutely.
And I think I mean, I can't say enough about weight resistance training, about it gives you, confidence and self-esteem and power and strength and everything else. I think it's good. I think it's good for the soul. Again, as long as it's kind of controlled and not obsessive, I think it's great
Yeah.
for just rounding out somebody's personality and their lifestyle and stuff. So, but how do you, for people out there listening, because I'll give you a quick story, but my son, before I took him to the gym, he's a very visual person. He's a very cerebral, visual kind of person. He imagined the gym being this dark dungeon with
Yeah.
these muscle guys, and they're all mad and they're tearing the place up. And I was like, yeah, there's like dumpster fires everywhere, and there's like chains and like, but we have a sense of humor too. But
Yeah.
I was almost like on my knees, like, I promise you, it's not like that. I promise you, you know. And so I finally got him in there, and I took him on a little tour first before we ever touched a weight, and to kind of get him comfortable in the space. So, in your opinion, how would somebody, trying to get their son in the gym, trying to get him to consistently go in there, like again, not pushing him but coaxing him in there, how do you to motivate him to go versus their intimidation?
Yeah. Well, the gym can be a very intimidating place,
Hmm.
and not just for kids. I mean, for adults. I've seen, 40, 50-year-old people coming into the gym, and it's their first time to ever come through those doors. And it's very intimidating because you see guys in there that
Hmm.
have been doing this for years. A lot of people in really good shape. So you got your hardcore lifters, you got the cardio people, running on the treadmill, doing the elliptical. It's very intimidating. So I think you did the right thing by take him in there and show him around, and just like don't go in there to work out the first day.
Right.
Just go look at it, get a feel what's going on. But I think you can. I always like to say encourage, but don't push.
Mhm.
You know, Explain the benefits, what it can do for you, but you can't drive them to do it. You can't make them do it because they'll resist. The first step is getting over that intimidation factor for sure.
Yeah, and I know it just brought to mind, we both worked out in some of the same gyms together, different gyms, etc. And we know some of the same people. And, a lot of times these people kind of look intimidating, but they're teddy bears. They're
Yeah,
harmless.
yeah.
They're just characters,
Right, right.
And 99% of those guys that look like they want to bite your head off would help you in a heartbeat, and
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm including you in that category. No. But you're right. It can be intimidating, but I think the reality of it is that I think people, majority of people in the world. I'm an optimist, so I think a majority of people in the world are good and they want to help you, and they're very non-threatening once you get down to it. So if somebody out there is listening, hey, I want to bring my son in. He's 15, 16, 17, whatever the age. What are like three things you could tell them? Some three words of advice that they could at least start. They can maybe put into practice today, tomorrow.
Yeah.
To kind of like we said, not intimidate our children, but to encourage them.
Yeah, well, I hit on one a minute ago.
Hmm.
Encourage, but don't push. To
Hmm.
me, that's the most important thing.
Hmm.
Like, show them, lead them, but don't. You cannot force somebody to do something if they're not ready.
Hmm.
So to me, that's a huge thing to keep in mind. The second thing is, once my son really got into it and started enjoying it, we worked out together.
Hmm.
And now, like I say, he's almost 26. We don't, we talk every day or either text or on the phone, but I don't get to see him every day because, he's got a full-time job. He's got things going on. So the second thing is just enjoy the time together because I'm gonna tell you, you're gonna blink and your kid's gonna be grown and out of the house. So enjoy it. And really the third thing that comes to mind is just stay involved. Like a perfect example of this is last night, my son texted me from the gym and said, "Hey, Dad, I just want to let you know I got a new, personal record on a certain lift today during this workout." Yeah, and I was like, man, that's great. So we texted back and forth. Then when he got home, we talked a little bit more about it. But you know, it's just really cool to have that common thread that we could both relate to. Because again, he's 26. He's been working out for 11, 12 years now, and so he's putting on some size, but he can tell me about it. We can share the certain things about his workouts, and I give him tips on things I'm doing now. So it's just staying involved with your kid even as they get older. I think that's a great thing.
All right. I will let that be the last word. And guys, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, and we are out.